I'm your host, Chris Morga, a certified professional career coach and former member of the Forbes Coaches Council. And I got to be honest, I'm a little bit of a fanboy. I'm really excited about today's guest. He started me on my productivity journey about 5 years ago, I think, and I never looked back. So I appreciate you, Carl. Carl Pullein, he is the creator of the time sector system, as well as COD, or collect, organize, and do time management systems, and has helped thousands of people around the world get better at managing their time and becoming more focused on what's important to them. So that resonates really well with me. Carl has written 3 books on productivity and time management, with an exciting new one in production that we talked a little bit offline on, but he'll get into that. And that will revolutionize time management for the 21st century. And I'm excited for that. He also coaches companies and individuals around the world through his one-to-one and online course programs. I'm so excited. Carl, thank you so much for being on the show today.
No, it's a real pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
I got to be honest, and I'll let the listeners know, I took a shot. I'm new at this, and I said, you know what? I followed Carl for so many years. Let me just send him an email and see if maybe he'd want to come on and be a guest and share some of his knowledge for a lot of the audience on the Broken Mold podcast. And when you replied back, I got to be honest, I was like a 12-year-old boy. I was running around the house. Carl said, yeah, he's going to be on the show. My wife was like, oh, you're such a dork. But man, thank you so much. Nice. I'm looking at your background here, and I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. That's where most of my clientele and a lot of my connections have grown over the years. And I saw that you and I have a little bit of a similarity. So you were a sales associate many years ago in a car dealership. Is that right?
Oh yeah, that was a joy. The funny story behind that is I did hotel management when I did high school, and then I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And there was this 4-star hotel just maybe 400, 500 yards down the road. And the general manager knew my parents, and he suggested, well, why don't you come and try the hotel management training program? So that's where I actually started in hotel management. But then I wanted a new car, and I obviously hotel, you don't get a big salary working as a trainee manager in a hotel. So I thought, well, how can I get a new car? And I thought, wait a minute, maybe working car sales. They give you cars to drive, as a car salesperson. So I applied, and I got a job as a new car salesperson for Vauxhall Motors, which was back then an offshoot of General Motors. And that's where I got my new car. So
that's incredible, because it was one of the same things for me.
Yeah. But that was a big eye opener for me. I mean, looking back now, I realized, well, that was great because I learned about sales. Had I been in hotel management, I would have only learned about standards, which is one of the valuable lessons I learned in hotel management. But car sales. So now I just realized that my 20s were just a fantastic, absolutely amazing journey. Although at the time I probably thought, what the hell am I doing with my life? But now I realize, looking back, I can, it's the Steve Jobs thing, isn't it? It's connecting the dots only when looking backwards. You can't do it looking forwards.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, I was very similar to the same. When I came out of the Navy, I had no idea what I was going to do. I was like, I need a job. And a buddy of mine was working at a car dealership and said, why don't you come in and sell cars? It'll be great. 12 years later.
I think I spent 4 years.
It really was.
Yeah, 4 years. It was brilliant. I mean, I learned so much. It was just a brilliant, brilliant time.
And it's interesting you said, because that's where you learned the art of sales. And I think that from a skills perspective that people have in their careers as they're moving on, to learn how to market or sell anything, especially when it's tied to your own career strengths or your own hard skills, is so important, especially since, we look at what career and work has been over millions of years or thousands of years. Selling and trade has always been at the core of it. You go down to the fish markets or anything, it's always been at the core of it. So I love that kind of spawned as a hard skill for you to learn how to sell something. And it ultimately brought you into where you are today in
Oh,
learning
it
how to
is. I
sell your
mean,
courses.
yeah. I mean, the great thing is, I was so lucky that I had a fantastic sales manager, David Cox, and actually, about 3 months ago, because of the book I'm writing at the moment, I actually got in touch with him because he and my general manager, Andrew, at the time, they taught me so much about time management back then, because hotel management was pretty, you just, it, it was pretty standard stuff. But suddenly in car sales, I had people to follow up. I had to, I'm going to make a, oh, there's somebody walking in the showroom. It was like a completely different environment. And they taught me a lot about sales management. And about 3 months ago, I managed to get in touch with David, who was my original sales manager. We hadn't spoken for 30 years. And we had a real chat about, and I was just so grateful that the stuff that he taught me, but it actually shows, because now he's running his own business. He's got 16 car dealerships, I think 16 car dealerships and 3 motorcycle dealerships in the north of England now. And, I mean, when
Wow.
we were together, he was late 20s, early 30s. I was in my early 20s, and it just goes to show that, I mean, David was really focused. I mean, he was brilliant at sales.
Good for him.
Oh yeah,
16
16
dealerships and 3
dealerships now,
motorbike
and 3
dealerships.
motorbike. Yeah, I mean, he's
He's
doing
doing
tremendous.
well.
Oh, he's doing very well. Yes. The weird thing is, he
That's
now
incredible.
hires Andrew, who was his general manager. He now hires Andrew.
Oh, really?
Yes. Um,
That must be a
so
weird type of thing. I've never had that in my career where I've hired someone that was my mentor. It must be a very weird process to
it
go through
probably is.
when
But
you're
then, having
interviewing.
said that, it was somebody that both David and we trusted him, because I mean, we know how good he is. And when David,
Yeah.
I know that if David needed somebody to take over a dealership that wasn't performing as it should do, you get Andrew in there. He'll sort it out. And I'm
And
guessing that's the
that's
reason why he
key.
did that. Mm.
That's key too, because
Yeah.
as we grow in our careers, we start to realize that we're not the masters of everything.
No.
And a lot of times you do have to let go of control and delegate some of the skills that you don't necessarily know to mastery level to
Mm.
someone else. And I love that.
Mm.
One of the other things, can you kind of walk me through how the dealership or working at the dealership kind of morphed into, because, if I have your LinkedIn up, sorry.
Yeah.
So as I'm going through your career progression, it seems like you had gone through a shift that I'm just guessing here, but at some point you realized, I want to do this for myself, or I want to build something for myself, or take a nonlinear career path. Can you walk me through exactly how that transpired, or what kind of clicked in your mind to where you said, I'm better off on my own and I can do this on my own?
Well, I did. Before that happened, while I was selling cars, actually, my father, who had a farm, he was declared bankrupt. Now, all this happened under the radar. I mean, he's not, he's brilliant with animals, but talk about business, he's not the smartest, in the world. But when it comes to animals, my father, if the horse is giving birth to a foal, he'll wake up an hour before it's due, and I'm thinking, how the hell do you do that? But he knows, he's just got that instinct. But anyway, he went bankrupt. I think he was probably around about 92, something like that. And he's not interested in business. He's not interested in the legal situation. He's just getting all these letters and saying this is happening and this is happening. But I could see it was stressing him out, and I thought, no, I need to take control of this. So I started reading through the letters. In my local pub, I started talking to lawyers who were drinking in the local pub. And one guy actually said, look, he says, this is actually quite serious. You need to get a proper lawyer involved. I can help you initially, but it's going to have to be handed over to somebody more important. And I was watching these guys, and I think it was Leslie, who was his name. He was only 2 years away from retirement. I thought, wow, what a wonderful life, being able to help people. I didn't see the corporate lawyer side making millions and millions of dollars. I was seeing the little lawyers who were helping people who were in serious difficulty. And that's what really inspired me. I thought, right, I'm going to university. I'm going to learn law. So I went to university, did law. And then I woke up to like that sudden realization that, okay, I've just made a big mistake. But it wasn't the fact that I'd made a big mistake spending 6 years studying law. the mistake I'd made was all my previous jobs had been running around in a hotel as a trainee manager, because you don't sit behind a desk, you run around the hotel all day, and running around a car showroom and forecourt. Yeah, I'd never really had a 9 to 5 sitting at a desk, but that's really what a lawyer's job was, certainly was back in the late 1990s. And after about 6 months, I thought, I can't do this for 6 months. I feel like a prisoner. 8 hours a day, I have to be behind this desk, and I'm only allowed out for 1 hour to get lunch. And back then I smoked, so it was okay. I could go out and have a cigarette every 2 hours, I think it was. I was allowed to go get a coffee and go outside and have a cigarette. I think I remember that. But, and I was thinking, do I want this for the rest of my life? And I thought, no. And that's when I actually took a time out and went, okay, I think I was 30 years old, and I thought, this is not the life for me. What can I do? Because I need to earn money. I'm not dependent on my parents anymore. So I thought, okay, let's go and what can I do? I've got a degree, so maybe I can go and do something abroad. And sure enough, I found you could teach English. So the choice was between China, Japan, and Korea. And the thing that swung it for me was beer in Korea was the equivalent of £1 a pint, which was probably $1.50. And back then in the UK, it was 3 times that. So I thought, I'm going to Korea. Oh, and cigarettes, because I still smoked back then. Cigarettes were only £1 a packet as well, which I thought, this is, because back in the UK, it was, I would say, $8 or $9 a packet. So I'm thinking, I'm going to Korea. So, and suddenly that's when I discovered, I like teaching. I was still working for a company, but that was the transformation for me. It's that decision to leave what could have been a really good career financially and stability wise, which I think is probably where I had the fear. I don't like conformity, and I don't like following blueprints, if you like. So coming to Korea as a 30-year-old, when everyone say, no, you should be getting married and getting a mortgage and having babies and settling down into a career. And I think I was having maybe it was the fear of that I said, no, I'm going to Korea for a year. Well, 21 years later, I'm still in Korea. So I could call it I ran away from my responsibilities. Yeah, maybe. But I think the most important thing is that it was career, I would say, that really opened my eyes to the possibilities.
That's interesting too, because I'll join in with you, but I had smoked too, and I remember a time where if $5 got you a pack of cigarettes and a full tank of gas.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was pretty much the norm. And you would go to work, and you had your cigarettes, same type of thing. 2 hours, I'd have my coffee, I'd go downstairs and have a cigarette, and you're starting to contemplate the meaning of life while you're sitting out there, you're watching. And I worked in New York for a large part of my career, so watching all of the people go by and wondering, well, what's their life like? They look at, and I would notice the people's faces, who looked very happy and content, who looked like they couldn't stand it and they just wanted to get back home. And you start to realize, do I want to be that person? Or do I want to be that person that it's 11:30 and they look so happy-go-lucky walking down the street because they're in command or control of their own lives? And I think that tie-in where you mentioned you weren't really good with conformity.
No.
And I can so relate to that too, because I kept thinking, even at a young age, I'm padding so many other people's pockets, and I know my talents. I know what I do well, but everyone else is benefiting off of that, where I'm still stuck in a 1-bedroom apartment. And, not that I wanted to have the white picket fence and the career ladder that has been, brought up in the 50s, that that's what career looked like. But I wanted to have the choice. So that kind of started me opening up into the ideas of what's an alternative career look like, or what are these methodologies around it? I'd like to kind of jump ahead a little bit, because I know you just got your silver play button. Congratulations. That must have been awesome.
Yeah. But then that can also be, it's a good thing, but it's also a curse, because you think, right, I've done it. Because I remember 4 or 5 years ago saying the goal is to get to 100,000 subscribers, because I didn't think it was possible. And then it happened. And then you think, okay, so, all right, what next? Um, and so
Mm-hmm.
I thought, well, according to YouTube, the next milestone is 1 million. Well, that means I'm actually only
It's
10%
a
of the way
big
there.
gap.
Yeah, I'm only 10% of the way there. So I've had to. I got the button in February, so it's taken me 5 months to kind of think about, well, where do I really want to go with it? I thought, oh, what the hell? Let's go for it. Let's go for 1 million. But what do I need to do to get 1 million? And that means, well, I
You
have
break
to,
it down.
I have
Yeah.
to change things. I have to change the way I've been doing videos previously to make them a little bit more entertaining. And also that makes it more interesting for me because I'm now learning a different style of editing, which is great. Which means now
Mm-hmm.
my proficiency in Adobe Premiere Pro is going to get even better. So, so
Yeah, and there's so much around that too. I mean, I watch a lot of YouTube. I spend a lot of time on YouTube watching other people that are in the creator space and looking for ideas. There's a very heavy emphasis on production value now,
mm,
where a couple of years ago during the pandemic, excuse me, people were just getting the information and the content out to showcase the value to their potential subscribers,
yeah.
right? But now you've got people like Peter McKinnon, Chris from Daily Tech, that the production value is really jumping up. And I noticed in your videos too that you've added B-roll
Yeah, well,
content.
that was one of
So
the changes that I've made in the last, well, since beginning of July. Really, that's when I decided, okay, from the beginning of July, this is where it's going to change, and let's see what happens. And it's also quite
it's
funny.
cool.
Yeah, well, what I'm looking at is like I need to create a signature. One of my favorites is Casey Neistat. I mean, I followed him for a long time. I just love the way he tells stories. I was thinking, initially when I first started watching Casey Neistat, I thought, well, he tells stories. He's vlogging. I mean, I do time management and
Mm-hmm.
productivity. There's no story there. But in that 5 months since February when I got the silver button, I've been thinking, wait a minute, there is a story. And there's always a story behind time management and productivity because there's the issue, and then there's the, how does that impact people's lives, and where's the solution? Well, all that can be created into a story. So that's kind of where all the ideas for the change up on the channel, and going forward, I know I'm going to learn so much more about Premiere Pro, and probably push myself as well creatively to think of how can I illustrate this point in a humorous way as well, because one of the things I have in my little notes now is where's the humor. So I just want one scene where there's a little bit of humor to make people smile.
And you definitely have achieved that. I mean, a couple of the videos that I was watching where I saw you sitting at your computer and throw your hands up in the air because you were trying to get a point across. And I totally resonated with that. And it did.
Mm.
It made me smile because there's a lot of times where I'm trying to learn Final Cut Pro.
Mm.
And then, when Apple threw it onto the iPad, I was like, okay, this is a whole different thing now.
Yeah.
It's a whole different animal. And I've done that myself, is thrown my hand up in the air and go, this is ridiculous. How do I do this? But, is that a new learned skill for you? Do you feel like since February, now that you've transitioned your mind to, okay, I want to add these little story elements, a little bit more of the production value, is that another skill that you're trying to add to the bag now?
I think so, because long-term career-wise, I would love to be able to stand on stage and talk, make time management and productivity a bit more sexy. But you can't do that just telling people about calendars, to-do lists, and notes apps. You're going to have to bring in story into it and make it exciting.
Yeah.
And so I think the idea for me is storytelling. Ultimately, I will hand off the editing to a third person. I want to learn enough for the next 3 or 4 months myself, so I'm not going to hand it over immediately. But I'm planning on handing over to a full-time video editor and just I'll just send them the raw footage, tell them they can see from the videos the story I want to tell, and then we'll create a style together.
Yeah,
because
that ties back to what we were talking about delegating.
Yeah.
We're not the masters of everything, and sometimes you do have to reach out to the people that are.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be like Peter McKinnon and be like a master at Lightroom and Premiere, or I think he's recently been going on to DaVinci now or something. But that's for those guys, and I think to master it, you need to spend a long time on that. So I want to tell stories and think of how we can make things a bit easier in the world when it comes, we've got to work and our personal lives, and how do we mix them together so that we're focused on the things that we enjoy and are important to us. Me spending hours on Premiere Pro is not going to do that.
Yeah, and it's not something that brings you joy too.
I enjoy it. To be honest, I do enjoy it, but it's not going to get me where I really want to go. I mean, I don't want to become a video editor, but I'd like to know how to do it.
Well, yeah, I think we all would too. And that, it ties back to being productive too, because when you're spending a lot of time video editing and you have a goal, I think your call line or your tagline in the beginning, it might still be the same, was to help 1 million people be more productive in their own lives, or something very similar to that, right? And for yourself, being productive and trying to convey that message to other people so you can help them out by spending 3, 4, 5 hours on Lightroom, while it does bring you enjoyment, it's not helping you to get that message.
No, it won't help me to get that message. No, you're right. And but it's something that I do play with Lightroom occasionally, but the Adobe product I'm with pretty much every day is Photoshop and Premiere Pro. Those are the two that I spend most of my time in, and I've mastered them to a level that means I can get my content out quickly.
Yeah, and that's the key, right? Because you want to keep that churning. Yeah. And, I myself am just getting into Photoshop because I spent a lot of time on Affinity and I loved it because I'm trying to be an iPad first, running the business fully on iPad. Not able to get there yet. I think it's on its way. It's getting closer, but, I'm still tied to the Mac where it's just the truck. Yeah. It gets everything done no matter what you throw at it. Yeah. Carl, can you do me a favor? Could you kind of explain, and I think this is important to a lot of the audience, can you explain the difference between being productive and being busy? Because I think there's a misnomer that people understand.
Busy is really, it's just running around with no plan at all. I mean, we can all be busy very quickly. If you have no plan, you have no idea what you need to get done, you're going to end up doing what everybody else wants you to do. And I can guarantee you will be busy because people are more than happy to hand off stuff to you if you're willing to take it. And, if you don't have a plan, you're not going to sit at your desk going, what do I do now? So you make yourself busy. You go in checking email all the time and your Slack messages or Teams messages. And, somebody says, oh, do you have a minute? Yes, I have a minute. That's going to make you busy, and that's busy. But what are you actually accomplishing there? Maybe you're making other people happy, but are you making you happy? That would be the question I would ask. Whereas being productive is knowing what is important and what needs to get done and getting that done. And that to me is the difference. It's more about clarity. Busyness is like that very, opaque window. You can't see out of it. It's just blur. Mm-hmm. Whereas being productive, you've got that clarity. You can crystal clarity. You can see exactly where you're going. You've got the path and you know how to get there because in your mind, or on paper or whatever, you said, right, if I get these things done today, this will get me to this place. You won't get over the line in a single day for most things, but it will get you that little bit closer. Yeah, one of the tricks, those things that you hate doing. I hate admin. I hate doing accountancy. I've got to do it because I run a business. What I do is I break it down. I'll get 70% of it done in one day, and then when I come, get close to the deadline, it's like I've only got 30% to do. I'm a little bit more enthusiastic about it, thinking I've only got 30% to do.
Yeah, it makes it easier. Yeah. And it's the smaller chunks because I think the biggest enemy, in my opinion, the biggest enemy of productivity is context switching. Yeah. I think it's so damaging for the brain to be jumping from one thing to the next. It doesn't help you in your journey to be more productive. And being productive is to produce something, right?
It is.
And
but I would say produce something worthwhile because it needs to be connected to what's important to you. I don't
Yeah.
mean, I mean, people say, well, it's important to my boss. Well, yes, but why? It needs to be important to you, because if it's not important to you,
Hmm.
you'll do it grudgingly. You won't do it well.
Yeah.
You'll hate it. You've got to kind of find that link to what your boss is asking you to do, to how's this going to, help me in my career. Or I might get a bonus, if I'm part of a team that's going to get a project done and we get a 10% bonus. Hey, I'm all in for that, even if it is a monetary thing. It doesn't have to be a career related or life changing thing. Although I suppose in my attitude now, and I didn't have this in my 20s, I wish I did, but I didn't have it in my 20s, is every job I've done, from being a bartender to cleaning bedrooms to selling cars, to me now, it's the kind of the penny dropped. That was education. So, and the
You're
great thing
right.
about that was I got paid for it. When I went to university, I had to pay for education. But when I got out of education and took those early jobs, that was them paying me to educate me. I thought, well, this is a win-win. So even on those
Oh
things,
yeah.
I don't really like learning this. Well, yeah, but I learned it, and I learned I'm not going to do that anymore.
Yeah. And most people take that education and don't even realize the what they've built around it. There's so many people I talk to, and I kind of have to interview people for a living as a recruiter,
Mm,
right? And I noticed that everyone has all the pieces around them that they've just accumulated over the years of what they're going to do or what their strength is to lead them towards what their own version of success is,
mhm,
or tied to their work
mhm,
in life
mm,
or their purpose in
mm,
life. Not many people, it takes a very strong individual when it comes to clarity and self-awareness to understand how to put all those pieces together.
mm,
But every single person that I've interviewed for a particular job, going from an analyst all the way up to C-suite, as I'm talking to them and they're uncovering these little strengths that they've developed over time,
mm,
or the little knowledge nuggets that they've developed over time, I see the whole pie put together
mm,
where they don't necessarily see that. So when I'm able to talk to someone or lead them through an interview to, well, why did this come into play in your past? Why did this come into play? And what's the goal around this? You start to see that. And for me, this is the most important part of all the work that I do, is that aha moment
mm,
when they start to realize, oh my goodness, I've been building exactly what I'm supposed to be doing very productively
mhm,
for the last 10, 15 years, but they never were able to put it together. And and as a career coach too, to get people to that aha moment,
mm,
that's so powerful because it can change your life. And going back to how I found you, is that I knew that I was all over the
mm.
place. I was switching from so many different things. And I said to myself, there's got to be a better way. So where do I go? The best free university out there,
Absolutely.
YouTube,
YouTube.
right?
Yeah.
So, and I had found you. I put productive lifestyle, I think was the search term,
Mm.
and I found you in there. And I said, okay, well, let me watch this. And I saw your COD system, or collect, organize, do, and man, was that game changing. And I even kind of adopted. I think you call it the golden 10 at the
Mm,
end of every day
yeah.
to plan.
Mhm.
And I was like, well, I don't want to copy Carl, so I'll come up with something else. So I called mine the Platinum 20.
Right.
So on my calendar, I put it as the Platinum 20.
Mm,
You know, um, but that was so powerful to me, the COD system,
mm.
because that changed my relationship. So very quickly, can you explain the COD system and how it kind of developed
Well, look,
into what it is today?
the where it developed was because when I looked around, because I've had the fascination with time management, productivity since I was a teenager. But what I realized, all the books that I've read, I was thinking, this is way too complicated. Nobody's going to want to adopt this, and if they do adopt it, the time investment to get it to work is going to lead to a lot of dropout. So I thought, let's just boil down all these systems down to their very, very basic essence. What's important? What's really important? I thought, well, you got to collect stuff. If you're not collecting stuff, then you have no system anyway, because you're just going to be, oh, I forgot about that. Oh, I forgot about this. You've got to collect the things that you're committing to. You got to collect those tasks. If you say to somebody, right, let's meet up on Friday for lunch at such and such a place, if you don't write it down and an emergency happens, Friday, you're going to get a phone call saying, where are you? Get it on your calendar, just get it collected. But after that, particularly not so much the events or calendar events, but like the tasks and the things that you're committing yourself to, what are you going to do with all this stuff that you're collecting? Well, you need to organize it. You need to decide, well, what does it mean? Where does it need to go? What do I need to do? When am I going to do it? That sort of thing. And then once you've got it all organized, you've got to get on and do it. So this is where COD comes from: collect, organize, and do. Now, when I first started it, I just said that was it: collect, organize, and do. But then I found that most people are spending 75% of their time organizing. And I went, okay, I need to refine this. So that's not the purpose here.
Guilty.
The purpose here is minimize that organization time, get really efficient at organizing so that you can spend 90 to 95% of your time doing the stuff that you've organized and collected. And that's where it really all came back from. That really is the essence. It's the simplicity of that whole thing. And most people cannot build their own systems just from that foundation of collecting, organizing, and doing. Now, you can go much more complicated if you wish above that. And I do myself. I went, okay, where's the next level here? I've got all this stuff organized. When do I do all this stuff? And when I use the word when, I went, when? That's it. It's time. Because time is fixed. That's the one part of the equation that none of us can change. So we get those 24 hours a day. We've got the importance of sleep. How much sleep are you going to get? Because if you don't get enough of that, productivity is going to sink. But after that, let's say you have 7 hours, that's going to give you 17 hours a day. What are you going to do with that time? Well, I've got to eat, I've got to take showers and all that stuff and spend time with my family. What's left? Now, that then depends on whether you're business owner or entrepreneur, because, the 9 till 5 thing goes out the window. Once you make that commitment, I'm starting my own business. Well, 9 till 5 doesn't happen anymore. But I realized, well, really all I need to know is what do I need to do this week, which is where the time sector system for me came from. And that was my revelation there. I went, oh, God, yeah. Now I don't have to worry. If I make a decision that I don't need to do something this week, I can forget about it, but I do need it to be organized somewhere that I can come back to next week and say, do I need to do this now? And if I do, I can then move it into my this week folder and say, right, that's something that needs to be done this week. So, but COD is that, from there you can build any kind of system as long as you've got the solid foundation of collecting, organizing, and doing.
And that's, you said it, you hit the nail on the head too, is, you're supposed to spend 90% of doing to move the needle, right? Because the doing part of it has to be connected to your clarity and what your goal sets are. Otherwise, you're just doing for doing's sake. Yeah. And, that goes back to, that's not productive. And, the email manager, one of the things that drives me nuts, and I see it on my son and my wife's phone all the time, is on the mail app. You see 3,437 on the emails. Yeah. That drives me nuts because I can't live that way. I mean, I check my email twice, maybe 3 times a day, and I process it a lot of the way that you teach in your courses. And I ask myself, I'll go through the email and I ask myself, what is it and what do I need to do? If I can't answer those questions, then I'll, like I took from your system, I put in the waiting for because I need to process it, or the action today. And I love that system that you've created because of its simplicity. And it's not overly done. Now, I read Getting Things Done and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But the same thing that you said, as I was reading through it, I was going, wow, there's an X amount of hours to set this up before you can even start putting it into action. I also read Tiago Forte's book on building a second brain. And I was like, oh, this is cool. This is nice. Using the technology that we have every single day as kind of a repository, and then doing almost a very similar type of system that you've developed as well. But the thing I loved most about yours was it was very simple, but yet powerful. Because when you do it, what is it, 26 days to form a habit? I think that's what it is, right?
It's roughly that. I mean, I think Robin Sharma says it's 66.
66.
I mean, I mean, to me, habit forming is like saying, okay, I've got to start doing this from tomorrow. And my system really is to put it into a task manager, reminding me to do something every day. And the moment I don't need to use that, and I'm just checking it off at the end of the night because I know I've already done it, I can remove it because it's already a habit. And it varies. Yeah. It depends on what I'm trying to turn into a habit.
What you're trying to create that habit out of. When I started doing that, because I put it in my calendar, 26 days, or I count down on the days. And when I hit that day, it was a switch in my mind. And not everybody's mind works the same way, but in my mind, it turned on to where I was doing this every single day. I was using a lot of the methodologies within your coursework that would drive what I was doing and where I was going to. And man, it was game changing. And it's so powerful. And for the people that I work with that are focused on the linear career path and not necessarily have even thought about where does their nonlinear career path start. I've seen that when they adopt something that's so simple in nature, but yet the outcome is so powerful, again, that aha moment comes through. And I'm like, there, you could see the light bulb come on and just this excitement come out of it because it's almost like they figured out the meaning of life. They're like, I got it. Yeah. I can change everything now. Yeah. It's a superpower. And, I don't know, it's so profound to me and I love it. I want to ask you one question that's kind of more for me than to anybody else. What was it like meeting David Allen?
Oh, he's cool. A fantastic guy. He posted a picture from Seoul on his Instagram. Okay. He's in Seoul. So I just put a message and I wasn't expecting a reply. I said, are you in Seoul? Do you have an event?
You took a shot.
Yeah, I just took a shot. And, within a few hours, it was like, yes, I'm in Seoul. Contact me. This is my, he DM'd me. That was it. Because contact me. This is my email address. I'll tell you where we're meeting. And so I emailed him. He sent back and I met him I think it was the next day at the event. And I said, would you have time for lunch tomorrow or coffee? I said, oh, well, I've got a flight late tomorrow afternoon. So yeah, I can do lunch. So I said, oh, okay. And my wife is Korean. Wow. So I said, Dad, we need a good restaurant. We need near this hotel. So my poor wife had to find a good restaurant near that hotel and everything. But no, he is an absolutely smashing guy. And one of the amazing things was, sometimes when you hear about people, they have these practices that they do and they've written books about it. You think, well, do they really follow it? And I had a little test in mind for this. And I said, do you still carry that note taker wallet? And he pulls it out. I said, sure. And there enough, the pen, and he's got 3 or 4 notes that he's on it. And I was going, wow, this is a guy who's living that system. But funny enough, what I noticed was, because he posted a video about a year, maybe 10 months ago, saying this is how you deal with paper, or I think this is how you get stuff into your inbox. And I noticed on his desk, this is from 10 months ago, he's still got in baskets and a little notepad. I guess it must be on the right-hand side of his desk, and the paper trays are on his left-hand side of his desk. I remember watching a video of his from probably about 12 to 15 years ago, when he was still living in the US, because he lives in Amsterdam now, but when he was still living in the US, exactly the same setup on his desk. And I thought, This is it. It's never about the tools. It's always about the system you put in place. And I was thinking, well, if you've been doing something like that for 12 years, your pen and paper is always on the same side of the desk. Your in basket is still on the same side of the desk. He doesn't even have to think. Takes a phone call, has an idea, boom, into the in basket. To me, I just thought that's the secret to productivity, is develop those processes and systems so that you don't even have to think about it. You just do it automatically. But yeah,
and there's that forming that habit.
Yeah, that's forming the habit. But to me, I mean, he is such a nice guy, and he was on my podcast about 3 years ago as well. And again, just reaching out email, I said, "Yep, no problem." He's always, reach out to him. He's more than just say, "Yes, I'll be on your podcast."
Oh, that would be
Yeah.
that. I mean, that would be a dream. I mean, I've read that book so many
Yeah,
times.
I mean, he's done. I
I
mean,
think I have memorized.
he's had the unconventional life as well. I mean, I mean, he admits himself he's the laziest guy in the world. I don't think he is, but that's what he says he is. But when you look at his work history, it's not been standard. It's not been the blueprint work life. I mean, it started out that
Yeah.
way, but it didn't end up that way.
Yeah, and that's what fascinates me the most about people that have decided to take a different journey is what was that moment? What did that look like? What did that feel like? Because if it's anything like myself, when you decide to make that shift, the first feeling that I ever remember was fear. Because you're supposed to play in this sandbox. That's what we were taught as children. Is there's a certain sandbox you play in to earn your money to fuel your lifestyle, and when you deviate from that, oh my goodness, it's that uncomfortability, and you just become fearful. But once you start doing it,
I have a test. I have a test now because way back when I made the decision, I'm coming to Korea and I'm quitting being a lawyer and I'm going to come to Korea and teach English. Everybody was telling me, "Oh, why? You must have gone mad. You're crazy. Are you drunk?" I had it all. He said, "Well, why would you throw away a career like that?" So when anyone ever says to me, when I have an idea and they say, "Why would you do that? That's crazy," I know it's a good idea and I must do it. It's
really, so that's what it is. When someone tells you that it's nuts,
yeah. Now that means I'm on the right path. If people say, "Oh, that's a really good idea," I'm going to stop and go, "Wait a minute, this isn't a good idea," and I have to go back and rethink it. But I've learned that lesson now. Like when I remember because I worked for a language institute for 8 years, I had a pretty good career developing in Korea, and I thought, no, I'm going to go and teach privately now. I'm going to start my own business and teach privately. And again, people saying, "Why would you do that? You've got the safety of the institute. They pay for your housing. They pay they get a good salary now because you've been teaching for such a long time." I said, no, I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to get my own house. I don't mind paying that, and I'm going to start off on my own. And I knew because there were so many people saying, "Why would you do that? It's not a good idea." I thought it's a good idea, so I did it.
Yeah. And that kind of ties back to what you were saying earlier when you said that you're not big into conformity. And as you're saying that, I'm like, wow. So that's something that if someone says that this is a social norm or socially accepted, you're like, nah, that's not really the way I want to go.
No.
So I love that test because it ties into your essence and who you are to go, oh, well, maybe I need to go on a different path because it feels better to me. And that's what it's all about.
It's about an exploration. I mean, I think I always think of like I remember this one. I think it's from 7 Habits, that Stephen Covey's book. And I was thinking about it. I think there's a section in there where he talks about, imagine that you're at your own funeral and people are giving a eulogy, on your life. And I think that resonated with me. And I was thinking, well, if I follow like the corporate lifestyle, if I follow the blueprint and don't follow what I really want to do, I'm going to lead a pretty boring life. And so I thought maybe that's not what I want. And I think that's because I read that book when I was about 18 or 19. So I think it probably resonated. But looking back, I went to a school where if you wanted to be the in crowd, you played rugby in the winter and you played cricket in the summer. And I was average at those games. I could hold my own, but I was never going to be in the first team. And so I thought, do I really want to be average? I thought, well, what's the one sport that everybody hates? I thought, well, in the winter, that's definitely cross country. Nobody likes cross country running. I'm going to do that. And sure enough, I was actually the school captain of cross country 3 years in a row. Nobody's ever beaten that. I went back to my school a few years ago, and my name is still on the board 3 years in a row. I think people look at that now saying, that is one crazy dude. But then I also, in the summer, I thought, well, let's do track and field. Now, everybody wants to do sprints because it's only 100 or 200 meters. And I thought, nobody wants to do 800 or 1500. I'll do that. And again, I was, school captain 2 years in a row. I don't think anyone's done that, or maybe that's been matched. And I actually represented my county at 1500 meters. And I think that taught me then that, if you go into the crowded field, unless you're particularly talented, and there's only like, I think 0.2% might be, best you're ever going to be is average. And I don't really like that idea. But if I go into something where there's a very small field, I have a chance of being the number one. I mean, I might not be the number one. I mean, I never broke the world record of 1,500 meters. I never won the English cross-country championship. But at least for me, I was able to get closer to the top than I would have done at rugby or cricket.
I loved it because what I'm hearing, and this is my career coach thing going on, but I love that you have such a deep-rooted curiosity of what happens when you do go against the grain. And it almost everything that you've brought up, you have that curiosity of what's on the other side. Everybody else took this path. What happens on the other side or the other path? I love that because I think that's what drives human beings in everything that they do is that curiosity. And your curiosity, not necessarily following a social norm, but wondering what happens when you take a different pathway. I mean, I don't know if it has, but that sounds to me like it's a large part of your success is wondering what happens.
I think that experience in school taught me that there's always an alternative, and it's not as scary as you think. Now, I've been living in Korea for 20 years, and the goal for most high school students is to get into a Sky University. That's Seoul, Korea, Yonsei University, the three top universities here. I looked at the statistics on this, and it's 0.02% of the high school kids will get a place at one of those universities. Yet every parent will spend all their money trying to get their kids to the best off-school institutes to get into these universities. And yet the percentage is only 0.02% will ever do it. And now if I was a parent with the kids in school in Korea, I'm saying, you are not going there. We're going to look for an alternative. Let's find something that's different where you can excel at. Because, why fight when the percentages are so low? Why not? I mean, I remember I had a university student in one of my English classes. It was a university student. This just blew me away. Went round the room saying, what are you studying at university? It's like computer science, business management, blah, blah, blah. Got to this girl and she said, Bulgarian. And I went, Bulgarian? I said, why? I said, well, my father's works for Hyundai and he's over in Bulgaria. And she said, there's only 15 people in Korea who can speak Bulgarian. And I just went, she's got it. She's got it. If there's only 15 people in Korea.
She's a genius.
I know. I mean, there's no competition. And it turned out that the big companies here, Hyundai, Samsung, and LG, all three of those companies had offered her a job by the time she was a second-year student on I think it was a 3-year course. And the salary she was offered was like 3 times higher than these other guys who hadn't even got a job and probably wouldn't get a job. I thought, yeah, that girl's got it. She's going to make it because she's figured out, don't play the percentages because you won't win. I mean, some do, of course. But the chances are you got a hell of a battle on your plate when actually there's likely to be an easier and much more enjoyable way. And she loved it. I mean, I don't know what she's doing now, but I know for one thing, she will have spent some time of her life in Bulgaria working for one of these big companies.
I love stories like that. I really love stories like that.
So
I appreciate it.
Those kind of stories helps me to realize that what I do is like saying, okay, everyone's going that way. I'm going to go this way because I know there's a better chance of success.
Yeah. Increase the odds.
Yeah.
Why not? You play the numbers.
Yeah.
Carl, can you kind of help some of the audience, that are teetering on starting something of their own or deciding to walk away from the 9 to 5? Could you offer some of the best advice that you've been told or something that you could share with them to motivate them to actually do it?
Well,
and take control?
I mean, for me, there's two ways of doing it. You can just say, okay, I'm done with this, quit, and just try and start your own business. That's, again, percentage-wise, it's not a good option, I don't think.
Right.
The one that I found has always worked is to start moving towards the career or the path that you want to take in your spare time. It's very much like Gary Vaynerchuk has always said, like, what are you doing between 7 p.m. and 1 a.m.? I don't think you need to be that extreme. But
that's us New Jersey guys.
Yeah, but I do think you need to be thinking that way, because if you're willing to do a day's work in your office job that's dragging you down and leaving you exhausted, and you come home and you've got the energy and excitement to actually sit down and work on building your business, you're going to make it, because that passion is there. And that's what really drives it forward, is that passion. And, once you start your own business, I think, you can go off in any direction. It is an amazing, yeah, sure. You become the HR director, you become the finance director, you're the CEO, the chair. You are everything initially.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we go back to that. Well, this is part of the education. You need to learn that. So it's hell for the first. You got a lot of hours work initially, but the payoff is because you develop processes and it gets easier and it just becomes automatic. But I think you don't. Just quitting everything and saying I'm starting my own business tomorrow, that I still think that's a dangerous way, unless you are absolutely sure that your business idea and business model is going to succeed. And I don't know many people who do that. It's just, again, on the percentages, it's not probably the best way forward. The best way is to start doing it gradually. The other thing I would say is stop wasting time on logos and company names. Because I've seen people saying, I can't start my business until I've got a logo and a company name. No, that's just procrastination. My company's logo has changed so many times over the last 7 years because it was one of the last things I did. Although I did get the website going pretty early because that was how I could get everything into one central place. But no, I needed to develop the products first. Because no product, it doesn't matter whether you've got a nice shiny logo and company name. Get a product first. Exactly. Whether it's a service or a product, just get that first.
Yeah, start there. Start at the end. That one was interesting to me too, because it was very easy for a logo for my company when I started in 2014. I didn't find that to be the hard part. I didn't find the name to be the hard part. What I found was the consistency to be the hard part, because I was, I had 2 children at the time, very young children. I had my wife, I had the bills, and I wanted to do that. I wanted to just quit what I was doing. I was in the legal field at the time, and I was like, I don't want to do this. And I wanted to just quit and then replace 9 to 5 with building the business. And I realized I can't do that. I'm not in a position to do that because my family is looking to me to, provide for them. But for the people that are, and I think that was perfectly said, the people that are considering it, just start at something, whatever your product or your service is. And I want to tie back to what you said too about a website. That's our storefront. Brick and mortar will be there in some capacity, but these social media platforms can rise and fall. Get yourself an email list, get yourself a storefront that you can still reach your customers at any point in time and still be able to keep that community growing of your customer base, because that's most important.
When I look at,
that
my
was
field,
actually perfect.
When I started, there was people like Merlin Mann and David Sparks, who did the Max Sparky podcast, still does do the Max Sparky podcast. I think Merlin Mann is still around. He's doing podcasts a lot. But these were the guys that I was following back in 2006, 2007. It was all podcast. It wasn't YouTube back then. But what I noticed what they were doing was that how they started was they just started blogging about an interest. They had an interest in time management, productivity, and the tools, because we were all talking about OmniFocus and stuff like that back then, and GTD. And they just blogged about it, about their experiences, and they got a lot of interest. And that told them that there's something here, that, there's an interest here that could be turned into a business model. And I realized that to me has been like the secret for me with my productivity business was before I actually started the business, I spent a year writing a blog post every week on time management and productivity. I still write because I love writing, and I still write that blog post, but those blog posts every week. But that first year and the way that it grew and the comments that I was getting told me, aha, there's a business model here. And that's what so that was my data. I didn't need to go and spend lots of money, commissioning, various, trying to pull data from various places. All I needed was a blog, or these days you could probably start a podcast. Either way, that would be my first step even today. If I wanted to start selling foreign cars here in Korea, for example, I would start a blog in Korea on foreign cars, because that would tell me the level of interest. And also it gets my name associated with foreign cars in Korea, which means now that I've got a following, and then I say, hey guys, I'm opening a showroom. It's not going to be one man and his dog who turns up. All my readers are going to
pre-established customer base.
And if you're not comfortable after a year, carry on just writing that blog post. So again, it goes back to establishing those habits and that process of writing. I love it. I mean, Monday mornings, I spend an hour writing my first draft. And right now, for me, the time is Sunday night. It's getting on for probably close to 11. I have no idea what I'm going to write about yet. I probably won't know until 9:01 tomorrow. 9:01 tomorrow morning. But there will be something, and I'll write about something.
Hopefully, you can draw some inspiration from our talk together.
But that's what it really comes down to is that I'm looking forward to the writing process tomorrow morning, and I started that back in 2015. So it's 8 years now. 8 years ago.
Consistency. Yeah.
And I wouldn't stop.
Perfect. Everybody I've talked to, almost at least 90% of them started writing a blog or started this journey in writing. So that tells you that there's a lot of power in language, in conveying a message through writing. And it is fun. You're right. It is very freeing. We talked earlier about day one and journaling. And, I've been doing it for, I think, a little over 2 years now. And I love it. I can't not start my morning with intentional journaling.
I have to do it.
And setting up my day.
I have to do it. In fact, actually, before when I was setting the studio up for this call, over in the office, I put my iPad right in front as exactly how I like it for tomorrow morning. So I thought, okay, when this call finishes, all I need to do is brush my teeth and off to bed. My morning table is set up now.
Yeah, you're ready to go. That and I learned that in the Navy too, is I'm very big on planning and setting things up for the next day or the next evening. People make fun of me all the time because on Sunday night, I'm sitting in front, I'm usually watching American football or whatever during the season or golf, and I'm ironing my entire week's clothes.
Oh,
shirt,
I've done
pants,
that.
Everything. And I've been doing that for 20 years now. And people are always like, what are you doing? Because I could have company over too. And, we're all talking. I'll break out the ironing board and I'll start ironing and we're laughing and having a great time. And they're like, Chris, every Sunday night you do that. And it's therapeutic for me.
I used
enjoy
to do that
ironing
when F1 was on back in the 1990s, and I was preparing for the week ahead. So there was a race every 2 weekends then. It's about the same now. So I thought, so I need 10 shirts. So the race is 2 hours. And we had back in the 90s in the UK, we had a commentator called Murray Walker, and his voice pitch would go very high when something exciting was happening. So I could just be ironing, and when he said,
so you listen for that,
and I could just, but it was perfect. Perfect time. Yeah, I loved that.
Yeah, and prepping everything for the week. It always was great for me, especially when I was working in an office or had to travel to New York every day. Just being able to grab and go, that was game changing, because I would rather spend the hour and a half on the train thinking about what I have to do for the day, or how am I going to attack a certain pitch that I have to do, or a meeting. I didn't want to waste the time in the morning ironing a new outfit every single morning. So I would batch a lot of the things that I was doing, and it helped me quite a bit. So I love that too. So Carl, what's next for Carl Pullein?
Well, the big project this year is writing the book that I know it will kind of revolutionize time management for the 21st century, because a lot has changed since Getting Things Done when that was written. I mean, that's based on David Allen's experiences in the 1980s and 1990s. He published the book in 2001. But I realized there's no book since Getting Things Done that has actually kind of revolutionized the productivity and time management system. And that's what I decided, that's what I want to write. And I'm very fortunate I got a publisher who's been guiding me And so I'm not sure when publication is yet. We're still trying to decide. It's either going to be late October or third week of January, which is quite precise actually, but there we go. But it's,
Yeah, that
I
was
know
oddly
it is,
specific.
but publishers know the best time to publish books, so I'm going with them. But I'm loving, again, because it's writing, I'm loving that process. But he's a hard taskmaster, is my publisher, but all for the good, because it's improving my writing. It goes back to, oh, this is an education. I'm learning again, which is great. And so that will be definitely coming out. That's my big project this year, and I'm really excited about it because it's pretty much everything that I've learned over the last, well, probably certainly over the last 30 years, but more specifically over the last 7 years, because that's where I've managed to, because I've been working with clients, I've seen other people's where they're having difficulty, and that's just brilliant, because that's given me, okay, so if I had that problem, how would I deal with that problem? And that's 7 years of those kind of questions almost every day has kind of developed a system, a process that can really help everybody. And that's what I want to get through in the book, which is why I'm really excited about it.
Well, definitely sign me up for a pre-order on that one. I'm in on that. Well, I appreciate this, Carl. Thank you so much for being on the show. And if just as a final note, if you'd like to share with the audience, where can we most contribute to you, or where can we find you the easiest
best place
on
to find
social?
me is just go to carlpullein.com, or all my socials is Carl_Pullein, and you'll find me there. Just search my name now. You can find it. It's nice to be able to say that, because like 5 years ago, I had to actually really spell it out. But now, it's whenever you do a Google search, you just type in my name. You'll find me somewhere.
Yeah, before the show, or even last week when I was prepping and everything, when we first talked, and I typed in, you're everywhere. And I love that. And I'm so happy for you that because, from following you when you really started pushing on this, like I said, I've been a fan of yours for quite some time. So I'm so excited to see your career just taking off to new heights. I couldn't be happier for you, man. Congratulations.
It's one of the things, I'd actually developed a free mini course on my platform for this, because I realized, I think this was it's probably about 4 years ago now. I realized there is a secret formula, and that is patience, action, consistency, and time. You need to be patient, because it doesn't happen overnight, despite what you might see on. Some people might get it, but you usually already have a name for yourself in order to get massive on the platforms. You need to take action, because if you don't take action, nothing's ever going to happen. That action needs to be consistent, because if you just I noticed some people put 5 blog posts up there and say, I'm a blogger. Well, yeah, but Seth Godin's been writing a blog post every day since 2002. He's a blogger. Yeah. So
that's a blogger.
And you've got to give it time. So that patience and time comes in, but it doesn't happen overnight. Funnily enough, I figured out that actually you need 4 years to get to a level of success.
4 years. That's interesting.
If you look at all the top YouTubers, they didn't start becoming really, really big until their 3rd or 4th year. It didn't happen for me until my 4th year. And even the blog didn't happen until really the 4th year. It was growing all the time, but it's always the 4th year. The 3rd or 4th year is roughly when things start to really escalate. And
do you think that the pandemic had anything to do with that, where people were forced to be home and consume content more? Or do you think that's just a natural bar of progression?
There was a blip there, but actually when I look at my numbers, because I got a little bit worried because 2020 was a good year, but then I was thinking, hang on a minute, if you look at 2019, it didn't go, my graph did not suddenly go like that. It just continued growing at the normal rate. So I thought,
steadily.
And it's still growing today in the same rate. There hasn't been a drop off now that the pandemic is over. I think some businesses, of course, did benefit, but they're kind of falling away now. Peloton is probably a good example.
Yeah.
And people aren't talking about Zoom, but actually for Zoom, it's become like a staple. So they did well out of it, and they're one of those rare ones that have benefited from the pandemic and managed to keep going. But
yeah, that was funny. I mean, Zoom wasn't.
Nobody had ever heard of it
until the pandemic hit.
Everyone's using Zoom now.
Yeah. They must have been sitting in the boardroom going,
Yeah,
"Whoa."
I know. Yeah, I know. But if you just look at the statistics, it roughly takes people from the day they start to when they say, "Okay, I've got something here, like it's earning a good income."
Mhm.
It's going to take you 3 to 4 years. And if you work
Perfect.
on that principle,
Perfect.
if you
And
make
that's
it
the
lucky and you can do it in 18 months, and that's a big bonus. But the good thing is, this is what I mean
yeah.
about PACT is patience, action, consistency, and time. If you start knowing that it's going to take you 4 years to get you to a certain level, you're more likely to be consistent and stick with it. Because if you think 4 years,
Mhm.
that's too long, well, don't even try because you're going to give up. So if you
Yeah.
just accept it's
That's
going to
exactly
take
right.
me 4 years to get me to this, it'll get you there because now you're going to have to be patient.
I'm really glad you shared your statistics too, because that's the biggest question I get when people start to, ironically enough, over the pandemic, my CEO and founder blueprint has been the most popular course that people have come to. And I'm a career coach, so I was teaching people how to excel at their jobs, but everybody's like, no, I want to start a business of my own. So I had to put a course
Mm-hmm.
together of, okay, well, this is what it is. But the biggest question that I get is, well, the pandemic was different. I can't create an online. So I'm really glad you shared your statistics of, it was a little bit of an increase, but it's been steady. The pandemic is not necessarily an excuse to not
No,
get
it
started.
wasn't.
You should just
It's
start.
changed. It's
Yeah.
changed the landscape, but it's made it better for creators. Because
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
anyone who's creating, even people who are creating like entertainment, like Mr. Beast or something, like more entertainment videos, those guys obviously
Mhm.
benefited. But the great thing is that it changed the landscape because it also showed that, wow, you mentioned it, the University of YouTube, but it also said, well, I can take a 20-minute online course or an hour online course, and suddenly I've got a new skill that I can work on and get better at, which might turn into a business. Like I mentioned,
Exactly.
I've wanted to increase, now I'm going up for the next level of 1 million YouTube subscribers. That means I have to improve my video editing. Now I have a choice. I can teach myself. I have the basic skills, so I know I can learn that to a higher degree, or I can delegate it and ask somebody to do my video editing if I want to spend more time on something else. But I have those options now, which, 15 years ago, I didn't have those options. I didn't even know what Premiere Pro was. But
Yeah.
so those options are open up to me now, and I can think, well, yeah, it's nice to video edit, but yeah, I think I'll get somebody else who's already further down the road.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. The options, there's so many more options now to be able to create anything you want. And that's what I tell people that, have just recently been laid off. If you look at the tech industry since, I think, January of 23, 200,000 plus layoffs. And while you're searching for a job, you could be building something of
You
your
could
own.
you could
I mean,
learn Bulgarian.
most people, you can learn
Learn Bulgarian
Bulgarian,
if you've lost
people.
yeah.
But that's the thing is, like, you're not spending 8 hours every day replacing your job with finding
No,
another job. Nobody can do that. You're going to drive yourself
you would.
mad
Yeah.
doing that. So if you can spend and break it up 2 hours of working on something of
Mhm.
your own, 2 hours of targeted job search, not necessarily the old days of walking into someone and saying, hey, can you hand this resume to your HR director? Those days are long
Yeah.
gone. Now you have to follow it up with a LinkedIn connection and reaching out to that manager and say, hey, I noticed we have this in common, and a thoughtful
Mm.
approach. But to the people that are listening, while you're doing that, build something of your own, get your name out there, because it increases the value when you apply for that position and they have a specific budget in mind and you say, okay, well, I want to go and build, get a job and build it on the side. You're increasing the value of what your salary is going to be, because that's social
Mm.
proof.
Mm.
That's exactly what you're trained to do, is to build that proof and value of what your skills are. So as Carl says, just start doing it and keep that in your mind that it's going to take some time. But I love that
Mm.
pact. I really, really love
By the way,
that.
you just reminded
So
me of a
that,
story of when I was teaching English. I wanted to reach out to Standard Chartered Bank here in the UK to work with them because it's a well-established bank in Korea. and it's a British-owned bank, and I'm from the UK. And I thought, who's the CEO of Standard Chartered Korea? Turns out he was a British guy. I thought, I know how to.
Got him.
I know how to get my resume, my proposal on his desk. And so I actually printed out a letter. I signed it with fountain pen, blue black ink, signed it with fountain pen. I actually hand wrote, dear Miss, I think I remember his name now, but dear Mr. Smith, say, and then signed yours, since it all in fountain pen. So it was all done in a very, very traditional English style. Put all my proposal stuff into a brown envelope, and then I hand wrote the address, his name, address, and I put private and confidential on the envelope. Now, I know in Korea they do not use that, and I wrote it in English, not Korean. And so I know when that came in, it said private, because his secretary will, of course, speak English because he doesn't speak Korean. So I knew that my envelope would end up on his desk, unopened, for him, so it's not filtered. Sometimes you got to play the system, but it's like, this is where the research comes in. You think, oh yeah, I can play with that and work with it. I mean, we did work with Standard Chartered for a few months as well, so I did get some work from that.
I love it. The difference is what the call outs. There was a guy back in 2008 that was sending around his resume on a chocolate bar.
Absolutely brilliant.
And I was like, oh my, I mean, who is not going to look at a chocolate bar and go, wow, we got to call this guy. That's really ingenious. And taking those non-traditional routes, or conversely, the things that you just mentioned, like sending a handwritten letter, and you take those same things that were widely used 20, 30 years ago, do those things now they're not
exactly.
the norm.
That was the reason why I came up with that idea, because I thought, it all came about because when my students who sent me a text message saying, thank you, teacher, for teaching me the last month, I don't have those messages anywhere. But when we moved house, I was emptying out my kind of store cupboard, and I found a box, and in there was all these handwritten letters from students from like 10 years ago. I thought, we keep them. We don't keep the digital stuff, but we keep the paper stuff now because it's so unique and it's special. And I still have them. They're in a box in the storeroom still. But, it's just, wow.
I love that.
I thought, there's a little trick. If you want to get into the CEO's office, you're not going to get there by email or calling them. But sometimes maybe a handwritten letter. And that actually was reminded of that when I was watching a video on Rolls-Royce cars. If you're ever lucky enough to be able to buy a Rolls-Royce car, you will, and it's brand new, you will get...
Not in my lifetime.
But you will get... a typed letter. It's typed, but handwritten and signed by the Rolls-Royce cars CEO. They sell 6,000 cars a year, and he was interviewed about it, and he says, "But this is what makes us special." And I went, "That's right, because no other car company does that."
Yeah.
There's even Ferrari, who sell a lot less cars than Rolls-Royce, never send you a handwritten letter. And also that their salespeople all wear white gloves when they're showing you around the car. I mean, I'm just thinking, that just blew me away.
That was cool,
that just
wasn't
blew
it?
me away. I thought, that's because Bentley, who is probably their competitor, they don't do that. There's a distinct, big mistake.
I remember going to a showroom for Rolls-Royce, and they had the white gloves on, and I was like, wow, look at this. You just felt like you were the top 1%.
And how much
just
how much
being
does
in
a pair
there
of white gloves cost? It's nothing. Yeah,
$3
it's nothing.
maybe.
So I just thought, this is genius. But that handwritten letter, I think, because I was looking at it from a time management perspective. 6,000 letters divided by 365 days. That's still probably, I think I worked it out, like 20, 30 letters a day that this guy has to handwrite and sign.
That's nothing.
But he does it every day.
Yeah.
And I just thought, that's commitment, but it's also why Rolls-Royce has such a fantastic reputation.
And coincidentally, remember back into we're going back now, but remember when you first started the car business? I don't know if they taught the same to you, but when we first started, they always told us to sell to your immediate friends and family first, because if you can be comfortable pitching to them, you can be comfortable pitching to anybody. And for the people that are job seeking, same thing, or even building your own business, start pitching and telling your family what you're doing first. Because that's the biggest fear. What if my family doesn't approve? But if you can get comfortable and confident pitching to the people that are closest to you, you can pitch it to the masses. And I remember learning that the first day of car sales, is they were saying, tell everybody in your family what you do, and let them know that you're selling cars now, and see if somebody will buy a car. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm not going to tell my mom and dad that I'm selling cars. There's no way. But that was so true, because 20 years down the road, I was like, wow, that means a lot.
Because you overcome the fear.
Yeah, exactly. Or staring, before an interview, staring at yourself in a mirror and answering the questions. I mean, the first couple times I did that, I was beet red. I was a nervous wreck, sweating and everything. But once I got used to it, it was nice and easy, And I think that's the takeaway that a lot of people need to do, is to get confident with yourself and comfortable with yourself, and you can take on the world.
Absolutely.
Well, Carl, thank you so much for doing this. I know it's late there, so I want to get you off to bed to brush your teeth so you can set up and go into Monday morning.
I just need to brush my teeth.
Usually, yeah, exactly. Usually I would have an outro, but again, being such a fanboy, I was wondering if you could do the outro for us the way you do in your YouTube videos. All that remains for me now.
Well,
I love that.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. All that remains for me now is to wish you all a very, very productive week.
I feel like I'm 12 years old. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you again. And Carl, thank you so much. Really appreciated this, and continued success for you.